Hello, I'm Hannah Wallace and welcome to FinextraTV. We're here at Sibos 2022 in Amsterdam. With me now in the studio to discuss real-time payments is David White from LexisNexis Risk Solutions. David, great to have you in the studio.
Really good to be here. Thanks for having me. And it's wonderful to be at an actual live event again, so that's good.
I know, and in person, and talking about a really important topic, one that we've spoken about before, and it's still at the heart of a lot of discussions during Sibos. So with that in mind, I'd like you to bring us up to date really and tell us how you've seen the rise in real-time payments impacting the financial institutions, but also the corporates as well. So let's start there.
Yeah, and I think it's been an interesting trend. I mean, if we think pre-pandemic, it was moving forward, people were keen to move to an instant payment environment. I think that sort of friction in the payments process, particularly in the consumer world, has been something that people have been trying to eradicate for some time. But I think inevitably the pandemic really drove adoption and really drove, I think, probably less tolerance about older payment systems, should we say, and more desire for things to be, quick, instant, frictionless. So we've definitely seen that trend has really accelerated over the pandemic, and now is front and center, probably at the minds of many consumers, and inevitably that flows into corporates. And I think that's opportunity and challenge, inevitably. I think certainly many of the financial institutions are struggling a little bit to just keep up with the flow. I mean, it's just, if you look at the numbers, obviously digital payments went up at a crazy rate over the pandemic, and inevitably that pushes all the infrastructure. So we're definitely seeing there's been some adjustment. I think there's been more of an awareness of some of the challenges that go with that instant payment, with moving towards frictionless payments. But I think we're starting to get on top of it, and certainly what we see from our customers is they are starting to get through some of that initial pain points that we saw caused as a result of the big increase in volumes.
All right, so beginning to keep up with that demand for real-time payments then. So with the rise of digital transactions then, I think one of the other challenges along with those you've just highlighted is the challenge of fraud, and there's some concern in that area as well. So take us through some of the risks in that space as well.
Yeah, and I think it's the inevitability of, if we want an instant payment and if we want frictionless experience, then that reduces the amount of time you've got to make sure that payment's safe. So from a financial institution's point of view, everything you want to do to make sure the payment is safe and that you should do it gets compressed from a timeline point of view. And I think inevitably that exposes the banks to more risk, and I think this is the balance at the moment that a lot of institutions are going through, which is the demand for that removal of friction in the process, that demand for just that instant payment environment has put a lot of pressure on both the fraud and sanctions side, and particularly with obviously the Russian sanctions earlier in the year. It's a tough balancing act, and we do see that customers have quite rightly had to, in some cases, slow the processes down slightly to accommodate the need for sanctions checks, the need for fraud checks. And I think that becomes a risk-based approach. You start to sort of more segment your payment types to allow you to drive them in different directions based on your risk appetite and what the perceived areas of concern might be. But it's definitely a challenge. You can't have quick and safe at the same level. There's always got to be a balance, and it really is working through where that balance exists for individual institutions.
Yeah, and staying on that note, we've covered challenges quite well now. So, and often is the case, from challenges come opportunities. So let's talk about the positives. How do you think companies can take real advantage of the opportunities presented by real-time payments, but also how is the customer benefiting from that?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the really interesting trends we see, and I think actually where we look to the markets we look to that we think are really leading the way is principally in APAC, and we've seen this obviously in China, but we've seen this in Singapore, Indonesia, where they're really at a different level of instant payment. That sort of frictionless payment experience, particularly in the sort of what are called the super apps that you get in the APAC region, really sort of outlines where we think the market's going. And we deal a lot in those markets, and the concept of having to pause your payment process to type in a credit card number, etc., is really antiquated in those markets. And I think that's, for us, a very important trend. We see that ability to really embed payments seamlessly into a customer experience is absolutely essential. It's where the trend's going on consumer, but I think inevitably it's where the trend's going on corporate. And that's where the other challenges we spoke to come in, but I think it's really where the market's going. And from a consumer point of view, as somebody that sort of goes out there and uses them, it is a fundamentally better experience. It's an experience that, if you think about one of the ongoing problems in e-com of basket, leaving baskets, the dropping out of the process, removing those friction points inevitably leads to a higher return for the e-com. So we definitely see it as a key trend. We definitely see it as an opportunity. I think financial institutions that can really build up their infrastructure, but also their risk profiles to handle that kind of frictionless environments, definitely have an advantage in the marketplace. And we can see some really exciting stuff in APAC, and we're starting to see it come into the European and US markets as well. And maybe there's some interesting stuff on the horizon with some of the big platforms in the non-APAC markets.
All right, so watch the space, it's safe to say. Really interesting to get your insights around real-time payments, David, and I'm sure we could talk for a lot longer, but we'll leave it there for now. It's day 3. I'll let you get back to the event, and thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It's been great. Thank you.